Welcome to the Academic Writing Amplified podcast. On this podcast, we believe that the culture of academia needs to change radically. Women and non-binary people are revolutionizing academia within institutions that were not built for us. If you're ready to reject the culture of overwork, kick guilt and overwhelm to the curb, and amplify your voice to make a real impact on your field without breaking down or burning out, you're in the right place. With our team of experienced writing coaches as co-hosts, we'll share insights and talk to inspiring guests to bring you the practical strategies, systems, and mindset shifts you need to find time to write, publish work you love, and design your career on your terms. And it all starts with writing. Let's go. Hello, friends. It's Kathy here, and I was inspired by our recent client retreat to bring you a podcast today about self-love in your career. Now, this might seem super cheesy, but inspired by Valentine's Day. Yes, a completely made-up holiday, but that, is about consumerism and chocolate. But hey, I love chocolate. I wanted to kind of pull out a thread from our retreat and share it with all of you podcast listeners. So this retreat was called Compassionate Accountability. Now, we came up with this theme. It was really Gina who came up with the theme. And then we asked all of our coaches, Rocio and Thea and myself, and our special guest, Megan Powell, who came to us and talked to us about executive function. We asked all of these guests to think about compassionate accountability, what that meant to them, and come up with workshops to deliver at our 2.5-day annual client-only retreat. So, we were thinking about these ideas and actually came up with some amazing workshops. And I'll be sharing one of them with you on the podcast in a few weeks. But at the very end of this retreat, where we had about 60 academic women and non-binary people in our meeting, about 60 clients total from our Amplify program, our Elevate program, and some special guests from our Navigate program. All of those people in the room together for 2.5 days, listening to workshops, doing group coaching, doing peer review. And then at the end, which was Saturday afternoon, we had a group coaching session, which was like, let's reflect and wrap up. And we asked clients to think about what are you going to take away from this retreat? And how has this changed the way that you think about your work? We had some very vulnerable sharing happen during that talk. And I just wanted to kind of bring some of the themes that came up to you, podcast listeners, to let you kind of share in some of that retreat magic that happened while we were all together last week. So one of the things that one of the clients mentioned was that she had originally enrolled in our Navigate program to become more productive, right? Which a lot of people do, right? Like the program, all of our programs really, but especially Navigate, is really designed to help you with project management and your writing and publication productivity, right? As much as I resist the word productivity because it sounds like robots. And this client admitted that because she had gotten so much more productive by using the skills that she learned inside of Navigate, yay. But what she did then was she continued to work the same number of hours, right? And she became kind of hyper productive. So instead of becoming more productive so that within an 8-hour workday, 5 days a week, you can have some spaciousness, or so that you can confine your work to 40 hours a week instead of letting it to be 60 or 80, right? She instead took all of that knowledge that she learned and just continued to work 60-hour weeks and kind of, just run faster, right? Like run faster. Now, that might initially sound like, wow, that would be awesome, right? But actually, by the time that we got to the end of this retreat, we really had been thinking so much about self-appreciation and self-compassion and how to deal with criticism in a way that shows our respect and appreciation for ourselves, that she kind of realized like that is the wrong way to go, right? Becoming more productive or becoming more skilled at managing your time, what it should do is lead you to more spaciousness and ease in your day, not just more and more and more production. And I thought that that realization was like a great realization of self-love, right? Like that's like saying, I can be better at my work. I can publish more things because I want to, and because I want to get my voice in the world and I want to build my career. And I can do it in a way that loves myself, in a way that shows compassion for myself. When I get tired, I rest. Maybe I make a mistake, I forgive myself. And that also shows self-appreciation, right? That I take the time to celebrate when I do something that I'm proud of. And I appreciate the work that I put into things. I appreciate how I am, navigating what can be at times like a really difficult career, right? All of those things show self-love. And to come to the realization after a retreat where we were holding space for these kinds of ideas, to come to that conclusion, I thought was such a revelation. And I was so happy that this client was vulnerable enough to share that with everyone, because I know that in that room of 60 people, that there were others who had done the same thing. They had said, oh, I'm going to get better at time management and I'm going to just time manage, but I'm not going to rest, right? I'm not going to use time management to help create spaciousness and ease and rest. I'm going to use time management to just do more, which of course only works for so long. So that realization that no, if I want to improve my skills, great. If I want to do these things, amazing. And let me also kind of treat myself with love and compassion and appreciation and really think about how I want the career to feel, how I want to move through the career, what it feels like to do that with love for your own brain and your own body. So I invite you today to think, if you've ever had that thought, right? Like, I need to get better, faster, smarter at working, and I'm going to use those skills to just continue to work myself into the ground. I invite you to think about how you might reframe your desire to be more productive in the light of self-love and self-appreciation and self-compassion, and really thinking about, how do I want this experience of being an academic to feel? Do I want it to feel super stressful and weighty and filled with days that make me just fall over exhausted, or that make me want to not go to campus? Is that the kind of feeling that you want to create? Or do you want to create a career that has within it aspects of compassion, appreciation, and love for yourself? Because I would argue that when you do that, you actually will do your best work. And more important than that, you will feel good and you will feel like your best version of yourself. That brings me to the next thread that I want to pull out from our retreat for you all. Also, this thread kind of came from this last group coaching call that we had during the retreat, the wrap-up call. And we had another client say something that really resonated with more than one person on the call. In fact, 2 clients came to the mic, right, and talked about this. And both of them said, and then many people in the chat kind of agreed, said that when during the retreat, we asked them to think about the role of rest in their work, the role of play, how to stop kind of self-judgment or blame, how to get out of cycles of guilt around projects, how to create motivation again when you've lost motivation, and not blame yourself for losing that motivation, but rather to tap into the fact that probably if you lost motivation, your resources have been depleted and it's time to kind of refill your rest coffers. When we had those types of conversations, what it brought up for some of our clients was, okay, if I'm not this overworked, overbusy, running all the time, stressed out person, then who am I? Who am I? And that really resonated with so many of the participants of the retreat. There was like the chat was all lit up because people were like, yes, I don't even know what my favorite type of rest would be. I don't even know what I would do if I stopped being this overworked, overbusy person. Like that has become my identity. So when that's taken away, if I actually do create spaciousness, if I actually do rest on nights and weekends, if I actually do take vacations where I completely disconnect from work, then what do I do? Who am I? And we talked, at the end of the retreat about getting to know that person and that being scary. It's like scary to think that at this, as an adult, right? And probably an adult who has been in the world for 30 years or more, realizing that you kind of lost who you were in the overwhelm and anxiety around producing and around career and around like running and busy, overwork all the time, that you actually like lost who you are and that you need to re-find that person and you're not sure who they are. That is scary. It is scary. But I also want to suggest that that can be the kind of scary that's exciting, right? My daughter calls it nervous-sighted, right? I'm nervous and excited. I'm nervous-sighted. I am nervous with anticipation about what I might find, because maybe that person is boring and maybe she doesn't know, like how to have any fun and whatever. But I bet if you gave that new identity the space and love to grow, that person is going to be even more awesome than the stressed out, over busy version of you. So I want to suggest to you to consider who you are, how you've maybe attached busyness to your identity. Because that's what the culture of academia, is telling you to do all the time, right? Like the answer to how are you is busy, right? Like the answer to how are you in the halls of academe is busy, stressed out, overworked. What if the answer was, I'm so excited about my new project? Or what if the answer to how are you is, great, I'm going to go give class and I can't wait to like talk about this thing. Or great, I had a really wonderful writing day this week. Think about the possibilities. Even things like, great, I took 2 weeks of rest over the semester break and I'm coming back refreshed. Like nobody ever says that as the answer to, like when you see somebody after break, right? The acceptable answer is kind of like, I don't want to be back, right? Or it's like, yeah, I never really got a break because I used the break to catch up. Ugh, no. No, that's not the best you. That's not the best you. And so I wanted to share with you all, podcast listeners, this revelation, again, that so many people, that many of the participants in our retreat had around this idea, like if I gave myself the self-appreciation, compassion, and love that I really deserve, who would I be? Who could I be? So I want you to consider that question, and I want you to think about how you can create that space for loving and appreciating yourself and treating yourself with compassion in your career. I'll round out today's episode with some suggestions about what self-love could look like for you as an academic. One thing I would love for you to do is think about the kinds of activities that really fill you up. So for me, and I'll admit this like straight out, for me, I love to go to the beach. And thankfully for me, I live on a tropical island and there's beaches. I can see the beach from my house. Yet I'm always coming up with excuses to not go to the beach, right? And most of them are COVID related. I don't want to be on a crowded beach with a bunch of people, or it's too cold, or it's too hot, or whatever the silly excuses I make are. But I know that for me, a great act of self-love would be to take my butt to the beach and get there with my children, because they also love the beach, and spend time floating, spend time in the sand, spend time in the sun. That would be a great act of self-love for me. And so I promise you, dear listeners, that I'm going to do that within the next 2 weeks. I am going to get my butt to the beach because I love myself and I can give myself that kind of cup-filling activity. Now, I want you to think for yourself, like, what are those things that really fill you up? What have you been itching to do? Oh, let me say this one. This is a good one too. Another thing that came up in the retreat was this idea of productive rest. So that if you're resting, it has to also be some kind of production. So I'll give you an example. My husband is the best at this. Like and I'm not saying this is a good thing, by the way. So he'll always be saying things to the kids like, you can watch whatever you want on TV, but you need to watch it in Portuguese so that you're learning language at the same time as you're like, quote unquote, wasting your time on this cartoon show. And they do it because they love their father and they get it. Then they want to watch whatever they want. So they don't mind putting the language in Portuguese. They're bilingual Spanish, English speakers. And so they actually have learned a lot of Portuguese pretty easily. But that's exactly the kind of thing. Like, if you want to rest, like here's something someone said at the retreat. They're like, yeah, I always think I can't read fiction. Like, because reading fiction would be like a waste of time. I should read nonfiction so I can learn something. All right. So do you see what I mean by productive rest? Like this idea that even when I'm resting, I have to be learning or doing or whatever. So I would like to give you permission to have completely unproductive rest. So for me, and I've mentioned this before, I love myself a good fantasy novel series with a female protagonist. So that's what I do. And I read these thick books and my kids are like, that book is huge. And I'm like, yep. This is like, and it's all I want to do is like get back to my juicy fantasy novel, right? So, and of course you can make all kinds of arguments for what, and as you should, right? For what you learned from reading books. Hello, like any kind of book, like, whether you call it literature or not, like you are learning about humanity and yourself and everything when you read a novel, right? But it is like so delightful for me. And so I encourage you to find that in your rest, if you have the idea, like, I can rest, but I better be reading nonfiction, or I can rest, but I better be watching a documentary. No, you don't have to do that. Figure out something that absolutely delights you. Oh, here's another thing. I love my husband so much. He'll never listen to this podcast. So another thing is, like, he doesn't understand. My husband is always criticizing the kids for watching the same shows over and over again. And I have to admit too, that like, I have like books that I love and I'll read them over and over again. And then I'll question myself, like, should I really, there's so many books, like, should I really be reading books that I've already read before? So I'm giving myself permission. I'm giving you permission to just reread stuff you loved. Like just do something that delights you. And that is a great act of self-love. So you don't need this reason, but I know a lot of you are thinking it. You are going to be a better academic when you begin to do these things. When you incorporate these kind of self-love, pouring into yourself, giving yourself rest, being compassionate towards yourself, being appreciative of yourself, when you do those things, you'll be a better academic. But more importantly, you'll be a better and happier person. So I'll leave you with that for today, podcast listeners. I wish you much love and care for yourself. Go and do something that absolutely delights you. Thank you so much for spending your valuable time supporting yourself and your writing by listening to this episode. If you like what you heard today, the best way to say thank you is to hop on over to Apple iTunes and write an honest review. The more reviews, the more amazing academic women and non-binary people will find this podcast. So go write one now.